Is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. Wherever you are in the nation, First Liberty can help you. The Frost family's been doing this since the 1990s. They want to help your business become a big business. We're talking six-figure loans and more, and you go to firstlibertyga.com. Spend 10 minutes with them. See if you're a good fit. They want to help you get to yes, where banks have been telling you no. FirstLibertyGA.com is the website. Thanks to them for their sponsorship. Y'all, I have discovered the hardest part of doing a noon to 3 show. I'm missing the Apple keynote. You know, when Rush was around, he and I had this ongoing race to buy new Apple products. And eventually I kept losing, and he finally admitted he was paying people to order the new products for him. But we kept up with it, and I am having to do what Rush Limbaugh told me he did, which I know for certain he did. And that is, I'm having to leave open the keynote muted in the background so that I can watch the conference. And look, there they are. As they announce new products. I'm not distracted. You're distracted. They've got, oh my goodness gracious. You can now like search iPhone pictures for text. How do you even do that? I don't know, but it's awesome nonetheless. Oh, look. And they're also announcing that you'll be able to turn your car on with using your Apple phone or your watch like a key, which is incredible. I keep hoping GM will do this. I want to upgrade. So I've got a 2019 Yukon Denali. And it got in a fender bender, and it was totally my fault. And they're fixing it. And I was thinking, I tend to trade in my car every 3 years. Now I know some people think this is absurd, but I drive about 50,000 miles a year in my car. And this past year I didn't because of the pandemic. I couldn't go anywhere. But normally, particularly in election season, I'm driving all over the place, and I like to drive my car. Like, I would rather drive from Atlanta to Orlando than get on a plane because it's a 5-6 hour drive, 5 hours really from where I am, south of the city. And by the time I drive to the airport, get there a couple hours early, get on a plane, fly to Orlando, have to navigate through, get a rental car and stuff, it is actually as quick for me just to drive my butt to Orlando, and then I'm in my car. And so I tend to do that. And now I need to upgrade. And I don't know that it's possible to actually go over to Jim Ellis and get myself a new car that I want, because I don't know that you can get them because of the chip shortage right now. The Wall Street Journal had this fascinating story on how computer chips in particular, except for Apple, because Apple makes all of its stuff now with its supply chain, it's almost impossible. It's a computer chip shortage that could last for 2 years, and the government's declared it a national security crisis now, along with the hacking stuff. Well, there's more on Colonial Pipeline I want to get into, but also, before I do that, President Trump on stage in North Carolina. We should talk about that.
877-973-7425.
I'm watching the whole Apple thing. I just, one moment, please. Siri, I don't care that you've got new languages. I care that you suck so bad.
That's not nice.
Oh, that's not, I don't care that it's not nice. You suck. Who cares? Y'all, Siri is going to be able to speak Turkish next year, and the Turks will hate her as much as the rest of us do. She's the dumbest assistant out there on phones. I'm sorry. Siri is garbage, and I love Apple, but Siri is just crap. Okay, we got to move on to more important things than how terrible Siri is. Oh, she's getting Turkish. Woo-hoo-hoo. Who cares? Okay. Donald Trump was in North Carolina. It was not even Fox, I don't think, carried. I think OAN was the only network that covered the whole thing. Here is some of what he said.
The media, the Democrats, and the so-called experts are now finally admitting what I first said 13 months ago. The evidence demonstrates that the virus originated in a Chinese government lab. Couldn't say it. You couldn't say it. And Dr. Fauci, who I actually got along with, he's a nice guy. He's a great promoter, you know. Not a great doctor, but he's a hell of a promoter. He likes television more than any politician in this room. And they like television. But he's been wrong on almost every issue. And he was wrong on Wuhan and the lab also, very wrong.
A little more.
The survival of America depends upon our ability to elect Republicans at every level, starting with the midterms next year. We have to get it done. We have to get it done. We have no choice, actually. We have to get it done. Together, we're going to defend our freedoms. You just take a look at what's happening. We have to defend our borders. We have to do all of these things. And the cancel culture, the defunding culture, the defending culture, and they defend the wrong things. We're not going to let it go any longer. We're going to stand up for our values. We have to stand up for our values, and we're going to take back our country, and we're going to take it back at a level that is very, very good for our country, and it's good for our citizens.
Okay, I gotta say something on this. He's not wrong and good for him, and taking on cancel culture is a good thing. But I got an issue here. The president has decided one of the people he wants to beat is Brian Kemp here in Georgia. One of the other people the president wants to beat is Doug Ducey, the governor of Arizona, who I think is term limited anyway, so he's not as big a deal, but he just wants to ruin his future. They are inarguably two of the best Republican governors in the country. In fact, Brian Kemp first sparked the president's ire by reopening the state of Georgia ahead of every other state, including Florida, and had tremendous economic impact. And I'm a little bit concerned by the lack of grace in a lot of culturally conservative voters who, I guess many of them still call themselves Christian, but they can't get over the fact that neither Ducey nor Kemp would violate their oaths of office to try to keep the president in office. I mean, in Georgia, for example, Brian Kemp was able to convince the Secretary of State to do a recount and do a great many things to shed light on the integrity of the election, but the governor in Georgia is constitutionally prohibited from intervening in an election. And because the governor followed his oath of office, the president's supporters want to replace him with a former Democrat who opposed the fetal heartbeat legislation and argued that from the floor of the House that if Republicans passed it, it would help the Democrats. And now suddenly he says, well, he's changed his excuse and they're just willing to believe him. Not because they really do believe him, but because they hate Brian Kemp so much. And why do they hate Brian Kemp? The man to this day says nothing but nice things about Donald Trump, does not pick fights with him, but didn't violate his oath of office. And the same holds true with Doug Ducey, who's been a very loyal Trump supporter in Arizona, but refused to violate his oath of office and intervene in the Arizona election in a way he's not supposed to. And so now the Trump supporters are out for blood there. If you're purging the people who have stood with the president but didn't violate their oaths of office. And in particular in Georgia, you're going to swap them out for a grifter and a huckster like Vernon Jones. In addition to costing the state Stacey Abrams, you're going to get Stacey Abrams elected. You are further dividing a Republican Party. Now, I talk to Trump supporters and they tell me that Brian Kemp needs to do some sort of outreach to him. Brian Kemp went to the Republican Party convention in Savannah, Georgia over the weekend and had a lot of cheers, but also a lot of boos from Trump supporters who think they're going to oust him with Vernon Jones. The Kemp supporters in the room were far more respectful of Vernon Jones's ability to speak than Jones's supporters were of Kemp, which tells me that there's no reason for Kemp to try to find common ground with these people right now. My suspicion is, as we move forward, what we're seeing around the country in Texas primaries, in Virginia, in a variety of places around the country. Texas and Virginia are really good examples of this, and some of the other special elections that we've had around the country. What we're finding is that the voters overall, there is a hardcore contingent of Trump voters, but in Republican primaries and at conventions, what they're doing is they're backing candidates who are supportive of the president, but are not the president's core supporter. So, for example, in Virginia, you had hardcore Trump supporter running for governor, aggressively shoulder to shoulder with Trump, hardcore aggressive Trump supporter running for governor, who lost to Glenn Youngkin, who is a multi-millionaire hedge fund guy from Wall Street. I think he worked for Goldman Sachs or one of the big financier companies, who said nice things about President Trump, echoed some of the concerns of President Trump, but was his own man. In the special elections in Texas, you've got, moving forward, people who said nice things about the president, but did not wrap themselves around President Trump or wrap President Trump around them, who won. And I suspect you're going to see this play out here in Georgia as well. So, for example, I think Brad Raffensperger is probably toast. I think that Brad Raffensperger has, and listen, I've got respect for Raffensperger and have said as much to him that the way he handled himself under fire, I got respect for him. But at the same time, I think he has alienated a lot of Republicans, even Republicans who don't particularly care for Trump. The Secretary of State in Georgia, is probably gonna lose in his primary bid, but I don't know that he will lose to Jody Heiss, who is a friend of mine, who I just adore Jody Heiss. But David Belle-Isle, who's the former mayor of Alpharetta, Georgia, is going to run, and I suspect that Raffensperger probably would lose to Belle-Isle unless Belle-Isle and Heiss divvy up the field. Now, in the Senate side, you've got Jeff Duncan is not going to run again. Butch Miller is going to run. There's a rumor Burt Jones, who I really like. Burt, I don't know Butch Miller as well. I really like Burt. They're going to run, and Burt, of course, he and his family, they're close to President Trump. He was at Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago. There are a lot of people who wanted him to run against Kemp. With Vernon Jones getting into that race, it divides up the Trump forces to such an extent that Burt probably will want to run for the Senate. He is a sitting state senator. Butch Miller, of course, is the leader of the Senate Republicans, not the lieutenant governor. He's the Republican conference leader, the majority leader in the Senate, or some such, or President Pro Tem. He's the President Pro Tem. That's Mike Dugan is the Senate Republican leader. But what we're finding around the country, and I spend specifically time here in Georgia with these divisions within the Republican Party, what we're finding around the country in Virginia and in Texas and in New Mexico and in California and also in Florida, states that have had some special elections and some local elections, what we are finding there is a pattern of Republican voters are finding people who are explicitly pro-Trump but are explicitly not the Trump candidate. I find that very interesting for a couple of reasons. One of the first reasons I find it interesting is because if you listen to the American media right now, the American media will have you believe that the only people who can get elected in the Republican Party right now are the people who engage in performative leg humping of Donald Trump. That's not actually true. It is the people who say nice things about the president, defend the president, agree with the president on a large amount of policy, but also are not the president's designated guy. Now, even the president, in some of his endorsements, has not been able to shape the field as much as he would like. North Carolina is going to be a very interesting test. You know, everyone expected Laura Trump to run for the Senate in North Carolina. Laura Trump is out. She's not going to run up there. Mark Walker, who is a Republican congressman, he is running up there. Pat McCrory, the former governor, is also running up there. And the president, President Trump, has thrown his hat in for somebody else. It is, what's his name? Now it suddenly escapes me. I've got it right here. Ted Budd. Ted Budd, he's a Republican congressman from the 13th Congressional District. Donald Trump endorsed him at the state GOP convention. Laura Trump declined to enter the race before that happened. He took a swipe at Pat McCrory, the only Republican with a statewide win under his belt. Trump said he's given Ted Budd his complete total endorsement. We're going to work with him, campaign with him. You can't pick people who've already lost 2 races and don't stand for our values. That is a swipe at McCrory, who held an impromptu press conference at the convention and blamed Washington insiders around Trump for not getting the endorsement. Mark Meadows, by the way, probably, who was a congressman from North Carolina, probably steered this toward Ted Budd. Now, that leaves out Mark Walker, who, by the way, is a profoundly good guy. Walker is a great guy who hoped to get the endorsement, but he didn't. All of this is to say that the people who say nice things about the president tend to go forward, but the people who wrap themselves with the president tend not to. The Republican voters tend to be more discerning than the American media when it comes to these things. Justin Amish, the Republican congressman who became an independent, who did not run again, probably couldn't have won his district if he had something to say about this over the weekend.
But I think this is a mistake for Democrats. I think it's a mistake to keep viewing everything through the Trump lens. Trump is dominating the Democratic messaging, and while the Republican Party may not be growing, maybe it's stuck, it is where it is, I don't think the Democratic Party is growing. Look at the number of people who are saying they're independents now. So as long as Donald Trump is the focus of the Democratic Party and the party is not growing, the Republican Party can still win in a 2-party system. I'm trying to change that with the Libertarian Party. But,
you were a lonely voice in the Capitol.
But that's the reality of it. So I think Democrats have to have another message.
I think
they do, but the media has to have another message as well. And the media is part and parcel of the Democrats these days. They've got to have another message because the message isn't working. Tying Donald Trump into the Republican Party, when if you actually pay attention to the elections that are going on out there, it is the Republican Party base itself who's not rejecting Donald Trump, but just not per se going with Trump's guy. I think you'll see that here in Georgia with Kemp's reelection. I think you'll see that in Arizona. I think you'll start seeing that around the country, where Republican voters love Donald Trump, but they're not necessarily going to go with his guy. Remember, in Alabama, he went with what's his name, who wound up losing the primary. Wound up losing. You had Judge Moore beat the guy and go into a runoff, and Donald Trump did not. He didn't get his pick there. He doesn't necessarily always get his picks, but the party itself, including people like Brian Kemp here in Georgia, they say nice things about the president. They defend the president's policies. They agree overwhelmingly. But asking a guy like Kemp to violate his constitutional oath of office was a bridge too far for him. And there are going to be bigger issues at play. Like, for example, those of you not in Georgia listening to me right now, you've probably heard of Keisha Lance-Bottoms. She's a national media darling. She's not going to run for mayor of Atlanta again. There is a massive crime wave in the city of Atlanta that she sparked. Do you know what her major initiative is right now? It's not crime, and it's not police. It is making sure the city of Atlanta, that has a multi-million-dollar rainbow-painted crosswalk, has more gay-friendly policies and personnel. That's right. LGBTQ plus diversity is the issue she's decided to tackle at the end of her term, instead of dealing with the people running around Atlanta randomly firing guns off at people, which happened over the weekend.
National connections, local focus.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. So have you heard about Donald Trump's pants? This is somewhat ridiculous. So Donald Trump was on stage in North Carolina, and his pants, he'd flown up on an airplane. His pants were a little bit wrinkled. And people on the left began a rumor his pants were on backwards. It was picked up by major blue check mark celebrities and others. It was picked up by reporters, and they all spread it. It obviously wasn't true. I mean, you didn't even have to see the picture to know there's no way Donald Trump put his pants on backwards, suit pants that are buttoned and zipped. There's obviously no way he did that, and yet they spread it. Even Snopes, which is very open these days about being left-wing now, had to debunk it, and yet it was reporters and others on social media spreading the rumor. Now, one more thing Donald Trump said is something we need to consider. It is this.
The time has come for America and the world to demand reparations and accountability from the Communist Party of China. We should all declare within one unified voice that China must pay. They must pay.
Yep. Here's Tom Cotton.
I think the American people deserve to know what caused the worst pandemic in a century. Look, China should be made to pay for their negligence and their deceitfulness at the outset of this pandemic, covering up its origins, not being open about what was happening in that lab in Wuhan. There's lots of things we could do to impose accountability on China. We could, for instance, work with their allies to ensure they're no longer getting sweetheart deals from international financial institutions like the World Bank. We could repeal the permanent most favored nation status we foolishly gave China 20 years ago. We could cut off visas to Chinese Communist Party officials and their princeling kids who love to come to America to go to school. But if it turns out that the Chinese Communist Party and their labs were responsible for a lab leak that caused this pandemic, just imagine what the American people will demand in terms of accountability. What I said will just scratch the surface.
Now, here's the thing. The very same reporters who rushed out to embrace the idea that Donald Trump's pants were on backwards are the very same reporters who rushed out to tell anyone and everyone, how dare you suggest that the lab in Wuhan had any responsibility for the virus. When you call everything you don't like a conspiracy, as opposed to actual conspiracies, people may stop listening to you about the real conspiracies. Part of the problem the media has here. Real bias. And, here's the other thing. None of them covered Donald Trump's speech in North Carolina live, but not a single one of them didn't cover it. They've all had to cover it. The obsession with Donald Trump lives on in the media. In fact, CNN today, their top story this morning was Liz Cheney and Donald Trump, a story that played out weeks ago, but at CNN.com, it's still playing out. It's ridiculous. Now, when we come back, we got to switch gears here. We got to talk about the hacking. There's more data on the Colonial Pipeline hacking and the Biden administration telling us it's the new normal. But first, I got to talk about Jon Rahm, the golfer who was booted out of the tournament because he tested positive for COVID, even though he's vaccinated and had no symptoms and was playing outside. The level of nuttiness in this stuff is getting out of control as we wind down this pandemic. We must discuss. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I got to talk about John Rahm. I've got so much I got to talk about in this hour. I got distracted in the last hour answering questions from people, and now I'm behind. John Rahm was forced to withdraw from the Memorial Tournament with a 6-shot lead after a positive COVID-19 test. This was a golf tournament, and it was on the PGA Tour, and he walked off the 18th green at the Muirfield Village Golf Club, where he's the defending champion. He's ranked second in the world because he got a positive COVID test. Now, John Rahm had received the first round of the COVID vaccine. He's 26 years old. He's tested negative every day, but his most recent test returned a positive result. Now, Rahm, he got the first round, and we've got a lot of science now that shows your first round of the COVID vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer, they can trigger a positive PCR test response. And it turns out he had the positive PCR test. It was the PCR test. It's a highly sensitive test. When you take the first round of the Pfizer Moderna vaccine, it causes an antibody response. And to the PCR test, we know that it can trigger a positive test result, even though you don't have COVID. And he's tested negative every day. He suddenly got a positive test. He has 0 symptoms, and they forced him outside. Y'all, this makes no sense. Secular society in the United States of America tells us to believe science unless it interferes with their dogma. So believe science except when it comes to transgenderism, and at this point, believe science except when it comes to COVID. John Rahm had a first-round vaccine. We know that first-round vaccines, if you take a PCR test, they're highly sensitive. It can trigger a positive test for COVID. Even if you don't have COVID, it's caused by the shot, not COVID. This happened to him, and the PGA forced him out of a game. Now, forget it. Let's say he had it. Let's say John Rahm had COVID. He's on a freaking golf course. He's outside. Do you know how many people have contracted COVID based on contact tracing? How many people in the United States have gotten COVID from coming in contact with people outside? According to the contact tracing, it's less than 100 people in the United States in a year. And of those 100 people, 80 of them can be traced to protest events outside after the George Floyd situation. The dude has no symptoms. He's outside, and they forced him out. That was stupid. Megyn Kelly tweeted over the weekend her kid had a soccer tournament in New York. It was going to be in the 90s, and they were forcing the kids on the soccer field to wear masks. Why? Because the CDC said so. Do you know how many people have gotten COVID at outdoor sporting events in the last year? 0. People have lost their minds. This isn't science at this point. This is cultism. A new pandemic-era accessory, a bracelet that signals your boundaries. The Chesterfield Chamber of Commerce in Virginia has restarted its in-person business networking events. Handshakes, backslaps, and close talkers are optional. Instead, attendees at the group event are encouraged to select a new pandemic-era accessory, brightly colored wristbands or stickers that signal whether they want others to come physically close or stay the heck away. A plastic display sign provides the code, modeled on traffic lights. Red means no contact with no exceptions. Yellow means elbow only, as in stick to the elbow bump, pal. And green says hugs welcome. The greens are just ready to party. Others, meanwhile, stand off to the side of the room. Y'all, we went to church this weekend. We have not set foot inside a church since March of last year. We've been to outdoor services and we've been to live stream services on our couch. But if I'm really honest with you, I'm not into live stream church. Might as well sleep in. We've been to outdoor church services. As it's gotten hotter, though, we've been less inclined to go, even when they move the outdoor church service like 9 a.m. One, for the last couple of months, I was doing 6 hours a day on radio. It was exhausting me, and I just wanted to sleep on the weekend. And I just decided when life got back to normal, when I started doing 1 3-hour show, I would go back to church. And last week, I moved into national syndication, doing 1 3-hour show, and we went to church on Sunday. And it was great. And I shook hands with people. None of this elbow bumping nonsense or fist bump stuff. I shook hands with people. Got a hug from one person. It was life returning to normal. At the White House today, the briefing room was full for the first time since the start of the pandemic. No masks, vaccinated people, they were all there. Full place. Life goes back to normal. But progressive Americans in progressive enclaves in this country and the nanny staters out there in charge of the PGA and Little League sports, they are incapable of moving on. They are incapable of going back to life. They are incapable of returning to normal. They can't let the pandemic go. You know, I've never really understood the people who want the government to dictate their life. I mean, who really wants to deal with Uncle Sam's man boob? But apparently there are a lot of people who want to cling to Uncle Sam's man boob instead of deciding for themselves when it's safe to go outside. No, we're going to suckle Uncle Sam until he says it's okay. It's safe to go outside. Why? Now, it was pouring down rain at my house a little while ago, and now it's not. It's safe for me to go outside, although it's going to be muggy as all get out. I was texting with a new friend earlier who is one of the few people in my circle of friends who appreciates Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam is the greatest band. I'm sorry, you can think that there's some other band that's great, but they're not as great as Pearl Jam. Eddie Vedder is awesome. I don't care about his politics. Eddie Vedder is awesome. And so he was telling me, this guy, he's a golfer, and I suck at golf. I am so bad at golf. Like, I want to get good at golf, but I can play 18 holes and probably lose 20 balls. When I was in law school, the partner I worked with, when I was a law clerk, partner I worked with the law firm, he was the partner in charge of all the parties for the law firm, and he could take back unopened bottles of liquor, but he couldn't take back the unopened beer. And so I would get it all, and my buddies and I, we would load up coolers and we would go play golf. And I never actually got good at golf. I got really good at drinking and driving. Did I just say that? I got good at driving the golf cart. And we would have more than a few beers while we played golf, and it was terrible. And I got to get good at golf, and somebody who is patient is going to have to go with me. And anyway, so I'm texting back and forth with this guy who is great at golf, and is also a Pearl Jam fan. And no one in my orbit of friends appreciates the greatness of Pearl Jam, but he was telling me that he's going to start going back to concerts. I've never really been to concerts in my life, except with my daughter. I've been to 2 Taylor Swift and 1 Adele concert. I was invited to a concert out at Red Rock in Colorado, and I couldn't go because the pandemic shut everything down. I'm ready to go to concert. I'm in my mid 40s now, and I want to start going to concerts for bands that I like, namely Pearl Jam, Judah and the Lion, and a few others. I was going to go to one of those last year, and it got canceled too. Life is going back to normal. And you should behave like the pandemic is over. If you've been vaccinated in particular, I'm vaccinated. I should be able to behave like life has gone back to normal. I went to church yesterday, and the church was not nearly as crowded as it had been pre-pandemic, but that's because a lot of people are getting up Sunday mornings and going to early service, and early service is outside. And y'all, I am not a morning person. I am, for a year and a half, was having to get up and do a 9 to noon radio program, and I was getting up at 6 a.m. to do it, and I hated getting up every single day. I would rather stay up all night. I would rather stay up all night and work through the rest of the day and then go back to sleep and then be up at midnight, where I'm a night person. I like to hang out with my friends at night on the front porch and have cigars and bourbon. Last night, I did it all by myself. I'm not a morning person. So I don't want to get up and go to 9 o'clock in the morning early service outside. I want to go to normal service. And I did. And we went into Sunday school. And no one had a mask on. There were a few people in the back of the sanctuary who had masks on. Life should go back to normal. But the fact that there are enclaves in this country that are overwhelmingly progressive and they don't want to take their masks off. Now listen, if they don't want to take their mask, maybe they got buck teeth or something. And I'm totally fine. You got buck teeth, you don't want people to see it, you got an acne problem, that's fine. Honestly, I gotta wear a stupid mask at night. I gotta wear an oxygen mask when I sleep because of my lungs. And I wake up, it's a CPAP machine, high pressure air thing, because of my pulmonary pressure and all. And I get little, you can see little straps in the morning. You can see the impression of them. And I'm totally fine wearing a mask in the morning if I go to Panera because they haven't disappeared yet. I'm like, I don't want people to see that. Or I got to get up really early and scrub my face hard and get them out. There's an upside to the masks. I thought when I was flying and stuff that I should keep wearing a mask and people would recognize. People recognize me. Like the fat guy that sounds like Erick Erickson who's wearing the mask. Guess who he is? So there's no reason for the mask. But progressive enclave, they can't let him go. They can't let him go. It's become religious dogma, some level of virtue signal. They are conflicted now. Should I wear the mask to show my virtue, or should I take it off to show that I'm not a Trump supporter and I've actually gotten the vaccine? They can't figure out what to do anymore. You've got Little League programs in a heat wave in New York City being forced to wear masks. How is that a good idea? None of it makes sense. All of it is contradicted, not just by the science, but by the CDC, an organization we know now puts politics ahead of science. And even they are saying you don't even have to do this. The very organization that said kids should wear masks on the soccer field has now even walked that back. And yet John Rahm, who's got the first round of the vaccine, who has no symptoms, who is on a freaking golf course making play without even a caddy around. They won't let him do it. This is nonsensical. And the ultimate thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a whole lot of people who should be taking things seriously who decide, why the hell should I take this seriously? None of these people are. They're all nuts. They're in a cult. And they are. At this point, it is a cult. It is a cult of virtue signal by some of these people. The very same people who were dismissive because Donald Trump said it came from a Wuhan lab. They're like, that's racist. That's racist. That's racist. These very same people are now like, I'm not giving up this mask. Oh, yeah, maybe it was lab created, but I'm not giving up my mask. I don't want to give up my mask. I'm vaccinated. In fact, I got the vaccine 4 times because I'm so pure, but I'm not giving up my mask. Okay. Don't give up your mask. We don't want to look at you anyway. Don't give up your mask. But don't make the rest of us mask up anymore. And also, don't make players who are playing a sport, a game, an event outside, put a mask on. At some point, common sense has to reign supreme here. And common sense is no longer reigning supreme. We are a nation governed by a bunch of idiots. I would say something worse, but the FCC would find me. But you all know what I'm talking about. These people are insane now.